The wait is finally over. Tonight is UFC 296 at the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas, Nevada, and it headlines with an incredible main event. It's the reigning defending undisputed UFC welterweight champion Leon Rocky Edwards is taking on former title challenger and interim champion Colby Chaos Covington. The co-main event is excellent as well. It's a rematch of a fight we saw just a few years ago. It's Alex Pantoja taking on Brandon Royval for the flyweight championship of the world. The third fight from the top is Shavkat Rakhmonov taking on former title challenger in his own right and legend of the game, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. Rounding out the main card is Tony Ferguson looking to get back in the win column against Paddy Pimblett. And the first fight of the night is Josh Emmett taking on a short replacement in Bryce Mitchell, as the first fight of the main card was supposed to be Ian Gary versus Vicente Luque. Ian Gary, as we know, a couple of days ago, it was reported by Dana White of the UFC that he suffered flu-like symptoms and he had pneumonia and was in the hospital. So he's out of this fight, which is a shame because there's a lot of talk about Ian Gary, about his antics leading up to the fight. He's wildly outspoken. He's a crazy character in this sport, and it's been great to watch his development inside the cage. So it's just a shame that we won't be able to see him tonight. But let's get right into the action. And the first fight, like I just mentioned, Emmett versus Bryce Mitchell. This is a very intriguing matchup. And the odds have Josh Emmett actually as the underdog, plus 205, taking on a Bryce Mitchell who's coming off of a loss from Ilya Topuria just a couple months ago. And both of these guys are coming off losses. Both of these guys need a win badly. Josh Emmett fought for an interim title last summer and then lost two straight to Yair Rodriguez, and then he lost to Ilya Topuria. So him and Bryce have a common opponent there between Ilya Topuria. They both lost, as I mentioned. But this is a really intriguing fight for this division because these are two guys that once were farther up in the rankings in the UFC featherweight division and now see themselves in a spot where if they lose, they really put themselves in a bad position moving forward. But this is a good top 10 fight in this division. Bryce Mitchell's ranked number 10 in the featherweight division. Josh Emmett's ranked number 6. And Josh Emmett it seems to me he is getting older. He's 38 years old, so this could be his last shot to make a push to the top of the rankings and get a title shot. And Josh Emmett's been on the cusp of a big title fight for quite some time now, but it seems when he gets to this position, he always kind of slips up and loses. And it's crazy to me, and the most surprising is that Bryce Mitchell is actually the favorite. He said he wasn't training. He was on a ladder when he got the call just, I believe, a little over a week ago for this fight to fill in because Giga Chikadze was supposed to fight Josh Emmett, and this was supposed to be on the prelims, but that got moved, as I mentioned, due to injury due to Giga. But in this fight, I'm going to go with the upset in Josh Emmett. I just think Josh is still a really good fighter, a really good striker. He had a really bad and rough performance against Ilya Topuria. I believe Topuria had two 10-8s in 2 rounds of that 5-rounder a couple months ago. That was one of the most dominating performances I've ever seen from Ilya Topuria. So yeah, I'm going to go with Josh Emmett with the upset because if he suffers 3 straight losses, I think his time at the top and getting big fights in this featherweight division is over, and he could retire anytime now. Like I said, he's close to 40. And Bryce Mitchell, he is taking it on short notice, so there's no harm in that. I give him a lot of credit in that because there's a lot of guys in this sport that wouldn't take on a very tough top 6 guy in this featherweight division in Josh Emmett, but Bryce sees it as a big opportunity, and I think this is going to be a really close fight. It depends where the fight goes. If it stays on the feet, favors Emmett. If it goes to the ground, favors Mitchell, obviously. And yeah, I think all five of these fights on this main card are all very competitive fights, and I think they're all pretty much pick 'em fights. Moving on, the second fight is one of the most intriguing and one of the fights that I've been looking forward to the most, actually. Tony Ferguson, as we know, since losing over 3 years ago to Justin Gaethje in that interim title fight, he has lost 6 fights in a row, and it seems the last couple they haven't gone his way, and people have been starting to wonder when is the time and when's the clock going to run out officially on Tony Ferguson's career in the UFC, because he's not getting any younger. He's going to be 40 years old in 2 months, and if he can't, Paddy Pimblett is a really good up and coming young fighter, but if you can't beat a guy, Paddy Pimblett, who is way off from the talent base that Tony was used to beating many years ago when he was on that 12 fight win streak during the prime of his UFC career, I just don't think that the UFC should offer him another fight. And I personally think if Tony loses this fight, I think he should just retire himself, because if you can't, like I said, if you're not going to beat Paddy isn't a top 15 guy, then what are you really doing? Because Tony's still a big name. He can get people excited, get people hyped up for fights for as long as he wants to do that. There's no doubt he's one of the bigger stars today in this sport. And this fight sees Tony, the sports books have Tony as a plus 260 underdog. Paddy Pimblett is one of the bigger favorites he's been in a little bit. He's minus 330. He hasn't fought in over a year. He's coming off of a major injury. We know how his last fight ended in the Jared Gordon fight. He won a close decision. A lot of people, including myself, I thought he lost that fight fair and square to Jared Gordon, but they gave him the victory. He's on a 4 fight winning streak, I believe, in the UFC now. And if he can beat a guy like Tony Ferguson, I know Tony is not the same Tony from 5 years ago, even, but he's still a name. And for Paddy, who's trying to level up in his career and show people that the last fight against Jared Gordon was a fluke and that he is a real player in this 155-pound division, I think this is a great step up and really is a guy in Tony who still is going to test Paddy, because even in Tony's last fight, when he lost to Bobby Green, we saw it, and that was kind of, it was just, we don't see that a lot. He got submitted by Bobby Green in that third round, that last round of that fight. And Bobby Green isn't excellent on the ground, so that was surprising. But Tony still showed flashes of that warrior mentality during the early rounds of that fight. And Paddy hasn't, Jared Gordon tested Paddy, but Tony's a warrior. Tony's a guy that could get Paddy bloody, and Paddy hasn't been in that spot. So I think this is a great test. But I do agree, Paddy said that this is kind of a lose-lose fight for him in this situation, because if he wins, people will say, "Oh, you beat a washed Tony Ferguson." If he loses, people will say, "You lost to a washed Tony Ferguson." So it's a lose-lose situation for Paddy, but all he can do is give his best out there and try to win this fight. They're matched up kind of evenly in height. Paddy's an inch smaller, and 3.5 inch advantage for Tony in the reach department. As we know, big age gap, 39 years old for Tony, 28 for Paddy. Paddy, like I said, is the heavy favorite in this fight. I'm going to go with Paddy Pimblett to win this fight, because Paddy is very good everywhere. On the ground, he's elite. He's an elite finisher when he gets there most times. And standing, he has some spark in those hands, and he's looked really good when he stands. He obviously hasn't stood and banged with a guy like Tony Ferguson of that level, but I think that I just haven't. It's not to be about Tony losing. That's a big thing. But to me, Tony just hasn't moved the same. He's moving like an older guy. And I know I think this is gonna be a close fight. I really do. I really think that Tony could get back on track here and beat Paddy Pimblett here, but I just think that I just think his time is up. And I know he was training with David Goggins, which I love to see, and Goggins will be in his corner. That's a great guy to motivate you and to be one of his coaches in his corner. But I just don't think that's enough. And I really don't believe that Tony has much more left in the tank. And let's move on and talk about the third fight from the top here. And this is a great one. It's Shavkat Rakhmonov, who's 17-0, and not just 17-0, 17 finishes in 17 fights, and he is like a zombie. That guy, he gets hit, he keeps moving forward. He finishes people on the ground. He has it all, but he hasn't fought a guy with the experience and the skill set like a guy in Wonderboy Thompson. Wonderboy is 40 years old, but he's coming off of a pretty dominant knockout over Kevin Holland just a couple months ago. He was supposed to fight in July. Fight got canceled because his opponent had to pull out. But I think this is another fight where Rakhmonov is a minus 700 plus favorite, and Thompson's plus 475. It's a big difference there, but I really believe that it's kind of the theme of this card for me at least. I think a lot of these fights are going to be closer than the odds suggest because a guy like Thompson, to me, should not be close to a plus 500 underdog. He's a guy who almost beat Tyron Woodley to win the title many years ago. He lost 2 title shots, but he's fought for a title multiple times. He's gone 5 rounds a lot of times in his UFC career, and he has more experience than Rakhmonov. Rakhmonov is 17-0. He is the younger guy by kind of similar to Paddy and Tony, 11 years age gap there, but Rakhmonov has the height advantage by 1 inch, and he has the reach advantage by 2 inches here. 77-inch reach for Rakhmonov, 75-inch reach for Stephen Thompson. And this is a great moment for Stephen Wonderboy Thompson to not just be a fun, exciting fighter, but to break through and prove to everyone that he's not that exciting, fun, young up and coming fighter, but he's a title challenger and a guy that can fight for the title, maybe even in his next fight. It seems like Bilal Muhammad, who weighed in as the backup fighter for tonight's main event, is likely to be next, but you never know. Injuries happen, weird things happen in this sport, and Rakhmonov's ranked 5, Thompson's ranked 6, and the winner of this fight is gonna fight for a title very soon. And to me, this is Rakhmonov's fight to lose. He, to me, is just better than Thompson everywhere right now. This might have been different 5, 10 years ago when Thompson was a much younger fighter. But I just think as the fight goes on, Rakhmonov will be able to wear Thompson down and just show him and everyone how great of a fighter he is and how well versed he is, and just truly that he could be an unstoppable force in this division. He hasn't lost yet. He hasn't come too close. He hasn't been in that many tough fights. So I think this fight will be good for Rakhmonov because Wonderboy can test him, and I think that'll be good for him. But moving on to the 2 title fights of tonight's UFC 296 card, it's Alex Pantoja, the reigning defending undisputed UFC flyweight champion who beat Brandon Moreno for the 3rd time in his career this past July to become champion. And he's taking on a familiar face, a guy in Brandon Royval, who he beat just a couple years ago. He submitted him in that fight, but Royval has won 3 straight fights, a couple finishes. He's looked very impressive as of late, and this should be a great one. This is, up until this point, this is the closest fight by the odds. Pantoja's a minus 200 favorite to Royval is plus 170. I'm going to go with Alex Pantoja to retain the flyweight championship. That title, since Mighty Mouse Demetrius Johnson lost that belt a couple years ago, it's went to a couple different guys. It went from Moreno, and it's gone from Davison Figueiredo back to Moreno, and now Pantoja. I think Pantoja is going to get the job done here. I think he is a smaller guy by 4 inches. It's a big difference, but only a half an inch in reach. So I don't think it'll be that'll play a major factor. And I think he just has his number. He beat him the last time. And I think Pantoja is just so well rounded in every area. He's elite on the ground. His striking's improving, and he is just electric every time we see him. And this fight, to me, is a lock to be an incredible fight because these two guys are great fighters. The flyweight division, which once was a division that almost got cut and gone from the UFC, is one of the most exciting now. All the title fights they have in that division seem to be like great fights. But let's not wait any longer. Let's get into the main event, the one that I've been looking forward to for quite some time since they announced it a couple months ago. It's Leon Rocky Edwards taking on Colby Chaos Covington. Edwards is the reigning defending undisputed UFC welterweight champion. He's going for his third straight title win. As we know, last summer in Utah, he brutally knocked out Kamaru Usman, and the head kick heard around the world. And then he successfully defended his title in his hometown of London this past March. And Colby, on the other hand, hasn't fought. Leon Edwards fought this past March of 2023. Colby Covington hasn't fought since March of 2022 when he beat Jorge Masvidal. That fight was 21 months ago. So this is one of I don't know off the top of my head, but I think this is, at least recently, this is the biggest layoff for a guy fighting for a title that's never been a champion. And I think that's going to be a big factor because when you're not in there a lot, I think that plays a big role. And a guy like Covington needs this fight more than anything. He's a plus 135 underdog to minus 160. Leon Edwards is the favorite because this is Colby's third chance and third crack at the welterweight world undisputed championship. As we know, in 2019, he lost to Kamaru Usman, got stopped in the last round. And then 2021, he lost a unanimous decision fight to Kamaru Usman. And then he fought Masvidal. So he's been a little inactive for my taste over the last couple of years. Since 2020, he's only fought 3 times. And it just hasn't gone his way in those big title fights. And this, without a doubt, this has to be Colby's last title shot. You can't. How many title shots can someone get? You can't. To me, if you lose 2 title shots, you shouldn't get another one. And that's been a debate. Leon Edwards has said that he doesn't think Colby's deserved this title shot, and I agree. Why should a guy get a title shot when he lost his first 2? I know the last one was very close against Usman, but I know it doesn't play like this necessarily, but Colby lost to Usman twice. Leon beat Usman the last 2 times. Obviously, that was the finish of their trilogy between Edwards and Usman just a couple months ago. But yeah, I think I favor Leon Edwards in this fight just because it's a thing that happens in this sport. There's great fighters, but then when they actually get their hands on the belt, they level up. And for me, that's what happened to Leon Edwards after he had that head kicked and knocked out Kamaru Usman. He leveled up in that last fight. He was walking Usman down. He even took him down. He looked very confident. His leg kicks were fantastic. He's just an incredible striker, one of the best in the UFC right now, not just the welterweight division. And Colby Covington at the Thursday press conference before this fight made it a lot more personal than it was. He mentioned and took a shot at Leon's dad, his late dad, who passed away when Leon, I believe, was 14 in a club. And that to me is crossing the line because you can't that people always talk about is what's the line in combat sports? Is there a line? Can you say whatever you want? And it doesn't really matter. It's just kind of building the fight. But to me, it does matter. And to me, Colby Covington is just not a good guy. He's proven that over and over again. He's a bad thing for this sport. And that's why I think that if he would win this, I think it's giving a spotlight to a guy that just wants to harm and put down others continuously throughout his career. And to me, he crossed the line against Leon Edwards at that press conference. There's no need to do that because to me, that just shows weakness on Colby Covington's end. If you're confident in your skills, if you think you're the better fighter, why do you have to go that low? The fight's already sold. You're a day or two away from the fight. If you think you're the better fighter and you know you are, I'm speaking on if Colby thinks that, why not just prove it in the octagon? That's the best way to prove it. And that's why I think that Leon Edwards is going to win this fight. I think his run, this heel run, is just run its course. He hasn't, he hasn't, he has nothing else to say. He just keeps making stuff up, and it's kind of just sad that he continues to go low and tries to make himself a superstar at other people's expense while just being rude, disrespectful, and getting back to the fight part. I think Colby is just a worse version of Kamaru Usman. I mean, we saw that he lost to him twice, and Colby is just a smaller version. Usman is a more physical, a bigger, stronger version of Colby Covington. Colby's great on the ground. He's elite there, and he's a really good striker too. But I just think that Leon Edwards showed recently his takedown defense is elite. He even has improved on the ground. I'm not saying he's going to take Colby down, but if he can defend the takedowns long enough to hold Colby off, and then they have to settle it on the feet, there's no doubt in my mind Leon Edwards wins this fight. He's a way better fighter, a way better striker than Colby Covington is, and this is the last time that we will see Colby Covington in a title fight. And I don't know where he goes from here if he loses this fight. My final prediction is Leon Edwards knocks him out in the third round. I think he gets the job done, gets his third title win, and we'll see what's next for Colby. But to me, people that talk about other people's families and people that have died for someone in someone else's life, they don't deserve good things to happen to them. So I'm rooting for Leon in this fight. I hope he gets the job done because there's no better story than Leon Edwards. Everybody doubted him. Everybody said he couldn't do it. He's won 10 plus fights now. He's on top of the mountain, and I think heading into 2024, he's still going to be the reigning, defending, undisputed UFC welterweight champion. But that's my preview for tonight's UFC 296 pay-per-view. The prelims start at 8 p.m. on the East Coast. 10 p.m. the pay-per-view starts. Thanks everybody for watching and tuning in today, and I'll see you next time.